Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches Season 1, Episode 1. It is called The Witching Hour. So this is a new AMC show. It ranked high enough in the Patreon pilot vote, so here I am talking about the pilot. It stars Alexandra Daddario in the lead role, and I know nothing about this source material. I've heard of Anne Rice because she did the big vampire book that everyone kind of likes, but I've never read that either or seen any of the movies based on it. So I'm going into this pretty blind. Didn't really know much about it other than it's clearly about witches in some capacity. So I'll be mostly spoiler free. I'll give you a warning later if I'm going to go into spoilers, but the general gist of this is that Alexandra Daddario plays Rowan, who is a doctor in present day, who thinks she has some kind of awful ability to damage people's brains, particularly burst arteries in their brains. And she doesn't know her past because she's adopted, and her past is kind of mysterious. But the pilot, and presumably the whole show, also has the backstory of her real birth mother and the family that she comes from, which is a family of witches, and there's this dark presence in their lives and all that stuff. And that's the gist of the show, as a gist of what it's about. So I didn't love it or really like it that much. It's not really a surprise, honestly. It didn't really feel like it was going to appeal to me. Not that I'm necessarily against witches or anything, but it feels like it's trying to be this kind of sexy kind of witch show with a mysterious, handsome stranger type character, and just a lot of sort of ideas and themes that don't necessarily appeal to me. I will say that I don't Alexandra Daddario. I enjoy well enough when she pops up in something, an ensemble role, or in something silly like the Texas Chainsaw movie from 2013. But I don't necessarily think she is a strong enough actress to actually sort of hold together an entire TV show. There's several scenes in this where she is emotional for, various reasons. Her mother is sick, or, her adopted mother is sick, or she's dealing with misogyny in the workplace, in a couple of different scenarios. And every single time where she's, in these confrontational moments, or something dramatic happens to her, and I don't necessarily think it's all her fault. I think the writing's a little bit kind of, sluggish and tropey and forced, rather than feeling sort of natural and engaging. But I do kind of feel like a sort of struggle, and it feels very TV. It feels very just subpar, I guess is the best way I can put it. Where I don't really believe or feel engaged in what I'm watching. I'm just kind of watching actors going through motions of saying their dialogue and sort of being very on the nose with what they're talking about and things like that. So yeah, didn't really get into the story all that much. I see what it's doing. It's setting up this lavish backstory about this family that Daddario's character actually comes from, and that there's a secret tied to it and all that. But fundamentally, I just never really felt all that into it, or never really felt any kind of style in any of the scenes. It's a very AMC show. A lot of very, very simple traditional shooting. It feels very networky, and maybe that sounds like a harsh complaint, I guess. But honestly, the AMC also, do Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. They've made good shows. They've done well with other properties in the past, and we're living in an age now where premium TV, good TV is a cut above, and I think you get away with it not being that special from a directorial standpoint when you have really engaging and likable characters who you really like being around for the hour every week, and you're excited to watch them, and that gets by some later shows quite well. You don't miss the more style or whatever. But as I was watching this, I constantly felt like a lot of the scenes, the dramatic scenes especially, would have benefited from a stronger style. It would have benefited from feeling tension in the moment, because the direction and the cinematography would actually create it for the characters, instead of just feeling very kind of by the numbers TV direction, where it doesn't assist or help any of the materials. So it's left to kind of just be what it is without any flourish, and that's a shame, because like it probably could have elevated it quite a bit. I don't know if it would have elevated enough for me to want to keep watching it, but it's the sort of thing that it can take a premise which is fine, but not necessarily one that appeals to me, and turn it into something that's must see. And I don't think that the pilot ever does anything to make me go, oh, I really want to know where this story's going, and I really want to know what this malevolent force is that might be tied to her, that she has to like discover and find out about, and go on. The first episode does a decent enough job setting up the different things that are going on. There is like a weird detail. So we see flashbacks of like Rowan's mother as like a young woman, as a sort of in her teens or whatever. But we also see some of her in present, as I think is present day. I assume is present day. I was questioning it though, because there's a doctor character who comes to see her at home, and she's kind of like sitting there effectively catatonic, right? And the doctor's there to give her an injection. This is the opening scene of the episode. And I was questioning what time period we were in for this scene before I even like cut to other characters and knew kind of that there was multiple parts of the timeline and stuff like that, because I didn't know anything going in. But I was questioning when this scene was taking place, because the doctor was wearing this like striped blue outfit and a bow tie, and it looked like he was in like a barbershop quartet or something, and it made me think, is this like the 50s or something? Like, when is this? But given the rest of the episode, I think is present day, which is really surprising. I don't understand why he's wearing that, but he is. So I'll accept it and move on. But and that's kind of like a bookend scene for the show. Most of it is getting to know Daddario's character, that she's this doctor who has, she doesn't really recognize this as like an ability yet, but she seems to have intuition and sort of can like tell things about her surgeries, and like guesses that something will go wrong if they do it a certain way, and to the point where it's helping her skill. But she's confronted with a misogynistic boss at one point. Actually, I shouldn't say he's the guy. There's a second guy later on who is very misogynistic and is definitely egotistical. This guy, the first guy who's our boss, might just be more of a general like shithead boss rather than specifically misogynistic. But regardless, he talks down to her. He's constantly he's constantly trying to propel his own ego, and there's a lot of talk. And this is probably the best thing about the episode, honestly, is the characters talking about how. So there's a scene early on where they're operating on a kid, and she was supposed to be the head surgeon, but the head surgeon of the hospital's taken over for political reasons. So she's in there and she's constantly trying to tell him, hey, don't do it this way because of this reason. And she's right, that saves the kid's life because she's there. But the fellow doctor or nurse is like, hey, you keep tiptoeing around him. Why are you so nice about it? And Daddario's character says something to the effect of, well, if I make him look like an ass, if I sort of embarrass him, it'll just make my life worse. It'll make me do my job worse. I have to. So it was kind of, even if he's not necessarily being strictly misogynistic, the fact that he's this egotistical and that she has to massage his ego by doing things a certain way definitely feel like a commentary on, the gender kind of dynamics of a workplace with certain in certain fields and certain people. And I think that little moment, I think I enjoyed, because it felt like it was saying something in a way that it wasn't like it was openly talking about it, but it felt like a really natural observation of like her kind of holding herself back because she can't embarrass the man. And I assume the themes of this are going to be something that's throughout the whole show. I assume that's a big part of it, is probably and this is always a thing with witches, right? When you start talking about witches and the Salem witch trials, and it's the number of men who would be embarrassed because they get turned down, or for whatever reason it might be, would just accuse someone of being a witch to get back off them, and this power dynamic. And then the idea of doing fictional stories with witches is you actually have characters with real powers who can actually do something, and so on. And that's kind of what happens throughout this episode. Is we have multiple examples of Daddario's character, and this is right at, it's before the opening titles even. We have this surgery scene, and we have the scene where she talks to her boss, and the boss talks down to her when she's trying to get transferred and get like a good recommendation for another job because she wants to help her mother who has cancer, and he talks down to her enough that it makes her angry, and she doesn't intentionally do it, but she effectively uses her superpower to, burst a vessel in his head. And I thought he was dead. They mention afterwards that he's in the hospital, so he's not actually dead yet. So I don't imagine things are going smoothly for him. But I assumed it was an instant kill in the moment. But there you have it. So, it does a decent enough job setting this stuff up. I will say the flashback stuff was a little more tedious in places, I think, which is the young version, the younger version of her birth mother, and the sort of controlling family around her because they know there's something going on, and in their family, and kind of the story of how ultimately our main character is going to be conceived is kind of brought up, and that's kind of what the story is. I kind of feel like it these flashback segments, they lasted a long ass time. It felt like there was moments in the episode where the main plot felt like it paused for, it probably gets the same amount of screen time as the main, the present day stuff, and it felt a little, I don't want to say uneven, because obviously by definition if it's the same amount of screen time it's even, but it felt like it shouldn't have been even. It felt like the main story in the present day was the thing that I'm supposed to care about more, or at the very least it felt like that's where more of the mystery is, and this was too flashback heavy for a first episode. So every time it cut to it, it felt like I was spending too much time away from the main present day stuff, especially towards the end of the episode, where it felt like we leave what's going on with our main character to tell more of the backstory. And ultimately, by the end, it kind of like makes it clear how the flashbacks and the present day stuff ties in. It's honestly, it's pretty obvious early on how they tie in together, but it's it's made kind of official and stated outright what the connections are by the end. But yeah, we get introduced to Daddario's character in other ways as well. Like, that's her professional life. That's the type of doctor she is, and that she cares about her patients and all that stuff. She cares about her mother, but then we also get the fact that she's quite a lonely character. She has a lot of meaningless sex. There's like one guy who does like her, likes her. What am I trying to say? Genuinely is interested in having a relationship with her, and is hurt when she just wants meaningless sex, and that kind of sets up like her attitude in life, and that she's kind of like feels separate from everyone. So it definitely seems like she's set up to be this character who has not really formed meaningful connections outside of her adopted mother, either because there's this inherent darkness in her that she doesn't quite comprehend, or like this mystery of like where she comes from is something that's weighing her down her whole life. And I'm sure the show will get into all that as it goes on. And then there's other sides to it, like the people back in the town she's originally from, who deal with like the birth mother and sort of keep everything secretive. Like there's like a whole character who's set up in this episode, who's obviously going to be a big part of the plot going forward. I like to try and like really explain when something's not working that well, and why it's not clicking in a way that's like, oh, I'm excited to see where this goes, or I'm excited to see what it is. And it feels so lazy to just say it's dull. And it's really hard sometimes to really extrapolate why something is dull and explain it's dull for these various reasons, and it's not entertaining to talk about something that's dull because it's just dull. But fundamentally it's perfectly fine at what it's doing, but it never is exciting. It's never there's no levity really in it. There's no comedy of anything, which is fine if you want to have like a super serious like thing. That's fine, but there's nothing else either. There's no like I never certainly felt any tension. I never really felt any emotions of any kind from it, and it's boring and lazy to just say, oh, it's what is like a typical AMC doll show. Not that they're the only ones guilty of this, but AMC have this kind of track record, or at least I find they've got a track record where, outside of a few notable exceptions, which is your Breaking Bads and your Better Call Sauls, there was like a Western with Pierce Brosnan that I tried on AMC once upon a time. It was very dull. Something I can't even remember the names of these shows. Like it feels like every year AMC just like pump out like bunch of shows that only ever get 1 or 2 seasons, and they just kind of disappear. And maybe this will do better because it's got the name value and people recognize the name Anne Rice, and maybe it'll find a following that'll be into it. But I certainly did not get anything really out of it. And there's not really much I want to say spoiler-wise. You know, I could give a spoiler warning and just explain kind of what it reveals as it's going on. So spoilers, just, you know, it's not that spoilery though, because it is just a setup episode. But, you know, we see that the young birth mother is seeing this man who is like a demon or something, right? Maybe Satan himself, who knows? But he's this sort of like force talking to her the whole time and talks her into going to a party where she gets pregnant. It does seem like her uncle set that up as well, because the uncle kind of picks the boy who comes up and talks to her. And then the boy mysteriously is dead the next day, and she's pregnant. And the demon or whoever he is excited she's pregnant. And in an effort to stop this spread of evil or whatever it is, the one of the aunts like steals the baby as soon as it's born, and you know, gives it away adoption, and she can never know who she really is because she's connected to this force, yada yada. And there seems to be like this agency who are keeping track of like the house and this force that's still there and whatever else. But at the end of the episode is that because the doctor who's supposed to give the catatonic mother her injection takes off her special necklace that's sort of keeping the demon at bay to some extent, he takes that off. As a result, we, you know, for the first time in our life, presumably, Daddario's character sees this man, who is really a demon or whatever, but she sees him. You know, that's basically what happens at the end. That's your hook, is she finally sees him, and it sort of sets up that this presence is now going to be in her life, and she's going to have to learn who he is, possibly be manipulated by him, and deal with it. And to give it credit, I suppose the idea that she has these scenes with these other men in the episode that she ultimately accidentally ends up severely injuring, if not killing. But she does stand up against men who are trying to hold her down. Like she's trying to get this new job with this like hotshot scientist who's doing like cancer research or something, stem cell research. He's this rich guy who like just pees, like he just like, there's like an open bathroom in his office and he just pees while he's still talking to her, and it's this ego thing to like, he's this confident, he's this powerful, and he tries to like force her to make this tough choice, and she's like, no, I'm not going to like, you know, I'm pretending that I'm in awe of how smart you are because I won this job. And she kind of opens up, and then ultimately, you know, the rage makes his brain pop a little bit. But I will concede that at least from a structural point of view and from like a theme point of view, setting up that she's already starting to challenge in the real world the men around her who are trying to hold her down, or trying to control her in some way. The idea that she's then going to be pit against this demon who, you know, takes the embodiment of a man who tries to control the woman that he's connected to. And that's what we see him doing to the young version of the birth mother. He's controlling her, he's manipulating her, he's talking her into going to places and doing things and kind of promising power and whatever else. The idea that she's going to be pitted against this, I think in theory, you know, I think a slightly better version of this episode would really get across the idea that she, in time, might be the one who's able to fight back against this asshole. I don't think I get that from this episode's writing. I think I've gotten to that through talking about it and through to sort of like talking about what's kind of set up. I think what they really should have done is just really set up the idea that like he is much like these men. He is this manipulative man to whoever he's talking to. In this case, it was our birth mother, and ultimately he's going to try and do the same thing to her, and she's already sort of fighting against it. She's already like doing that against other presences in her life, so maybe she's got a chance. Maybe she will be the chosen one who can do it, and that would be fine. That would be fine. I don't think it's actually all there in the episode. I think I've gotten there through filling in some gaps and some deduction, which means it's probably there in the story, and when you get more of a clear vision of it. But I think it is good in a first episode to tell one clear thing, to tell one clear mission statement of the show. That might have been a good thing to sort of try and focus on, and if nothing else, like get that feeling across at the end. But then again, I get that you want them to feel like a threat at the end, and maybe that's too empowering too early on for the character. You want to feel that she's in danger at first before she gets strong and fights back and that kind of thing. But there's a balancing act, and I'm not sure it really works. And I don't think the character, this demon character, Lasher they call him, I think, I don't think he is as charming as I think they're pretending he is, or is as suave. It kind of comes across me as an impression of someone else that I've maybe seen in a different movie. That's the angel on your shoulder who's very charming and suave and is able to talk you into things. I don't know if I quite get that from him here. I don't know if it's a miscasting necessarily, or if it's just the choice and direction and how to actually portray him with his mannerisms, his outfit, his whatever it may be. I never quite got that either. So yeah, I didn't really like it. I wasn't really expecting to, but it's not the worst thing ever, but it's not particularly good. It's an AMC show pretty much through and through. Check out at your own risk, basically. So but that's my thoughts on what's this called? Mayfair Witches. So thank you very much for joining me. You can support all the content by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and do so for any amount per month. And of course, you can like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the show. If you've watched it, any and all of those things is appreciated. So thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?